Welcome students. Name of the program Bachelor of Commerce, subject Economics, semester 1, course code CEC101, course title Microeconomics. The name of the module Stackelberg duopoly model and Kinked demand model from unit 4 Imperfect computation. I, Shrikant Madar, Assistant Professor in Economics from Dempo Charities Trust, SS Dempo College of Commerce and Economics, Kujira, Pambolim, Goa. The outline of this E-module: first, Stackelberg duopoly model. Second, Kinked demand model. Learning outcomes: after successful completion of this E-module, you're able to gain in-depth knowledge of Stackelberg duopoly model and you're able to explain the Kinked demand model. Let us see the first one, Stackelberg duopoly model. Before we understand the Stackelberg duopoly model, one has to understand the basic concept of isoprofit curve and the reaction curve. Let us understand the isoprofit curve for a firm A. An isoprofit curve for a firm A is the locus of points defined by the different level of output of firm A and his rival B, which yield to A the same level of profit, whereas the isoprofit curve for firm B is the locus of points defined by the different level of output of B and his rival A, which yield to B the same level of the profit. Students, this isoprofit curve is similar to the indifference curve, but the shape of this isoprofit curve is the concave to the axis, whereas in the indifference curve it is the convex to the origin. Okay, now let us see the concept of a reaction curve of a firm. Let's say for a firm A, the highest points at successive isoprofit curve lies to the left of each other. If we join the highest point of the isoprofit curve, we obtain firm's A's reaction curve. While for firm B, the highest points at successive isoprofit curve lies to the right of each other. If we join the highest point of the isoprofit curve, we obtain the firm's B's reaction curve. So the isoprofit curve closer to the quantity axis, the higher the profitability of the firm is. Further the isoprofit curve to the one's axis, the firm would incur a loss or a lesser profit. Students, this Stackelberg model developed by the German economist Heinrich von Stackelberg and his extensions of the Kuhn's model. There are certain assumptions should be kept in mind. One, duopolist is sufficiently sophisticated to recognize that his competitors acts on the Kuhn's assumption that the firms are in knave behavior. This recognition allows the sophisticated duopolist to determine the reaction curve of his rival and incorporate it in his own profit function, which he then proceeds to maximize like a monopolist. Assume that the isoprofit curves and the reaction functions of the duopolist are shown in the diagram. If firm A is sophisticated oligopolist, it will assume that its rival will act on the basis of its own reaction curve. This recognition will permit firm A to choose to set its own output at the level which maximizes its own profit. This is a point which lies on the lowest possible isoprofit curve of A, denoting the maximum profit A can achieve given B's reaction curve. The sophisticated oligopolist becomes in effect the leader, while the knave rival who acts on the Kuhn's assumptions becomes the follower. It's clearly the sophistications is rewarding for firm A because he reaches an isoprofit curve closer to his axis than if he behaved with the same knave as his rival. The knave follower is worse off as compared with the Cournot's equilibrium. Since with this level of output, he reaches an isoprofit curve farther away from his axis. If firm B is the sophisticated oligopolist, it will choose to produce X dash B corresponding to point B on A's reaction curve because this is the largest profit that B can achieve given its isoprofit map and A's reaction curve. Firm B will now be the leader while firm A becomes the follower. B has a higher profit and the naive firm A has a lower profit as compared with the Cournot's equilibrium. If both firms are sophisticated, then both will want to act as a leader because this action yields a greater profit to them. So in this market situation becomes unstable and this situation is known as Stackelberg disequilibrium. And the effect will either be a price war until one of the firms surrenders and agrees to act as a follower or collude with each other. Now let us understand the kinked demand model. This model explains why the prices are rigid, inflexible and sticky under oligopoly. The change in cost is rarely met with corresponding changes in price. Whenever the price changes once in a way, it is by a big magnitude. So the price under oligopoly appear to be relatively stable because the firms do not have any incentive either to increase or decrease the price of the good. The model explains why the firm does not have any motivation to change the price. For example, firms A, B, C operate under oligopoly market. If firm increases the price, the rival firms B and C will not increase their price and therefore A tends to witness a drop in sales. On the other hand, if A decrease the price, the rival firms B and C will also decrease their prices, therefore A will not get any additional sales. If price increases from P1 to P2 say by 10%, none of the rival firms will follow the price increases. Therefore, the firm which increased the price definitely will lose the sales by 20%. And if you see the diagram, when the price increases from P1 to P2, that the firm that increased the price, it will lose from Q1 to Q2. So therefore, the demand in this situation is more elastic, which is shown above price P1. If price decreases from P1 to P3, say by again 10%, every rival firm will follow the price decrease. Hence, the first firm will have a little gain or nothing at all. Firms which reduce the price will witness an increase in sale by 5%, that is Q1 to Q3. So therefore, the demand curve here is the less elastic, which is above the price P1. The elasticity of a demand curve is not same above and below the prevailing price P1. So above P1, the demand curve is more elastic. Below P1, the demand curve is less elastic, which we seen in the two diagrams. Due to the indifference in the elasticity, the demand curve has a bend or a kink at a current prices. Therefore, the demand curve is known as the kinked demand curve model. When there is a kink in the demand curve or a bend at the demand curve at a point B, there is a gap in the marginal revenue curve. The gap is EF. When the demand curve is more elastic, the MR curve is flatter. The MR curve is a flatter when the demand curve is less elastic. So at the current price, the MR curve has a gap. Now let us understand why the price stickiness in the kinked demand curve model. So if the marginal cost curve increases within the gap in the MR, the price does not increase. So the price changes only when the MC curve shifts out of the MR gap. ABC is the demand curve of an oligopolistic firm with king at point B when the prevailing price is P1. The equality between MC1 and MR is reached at point F and the corresponding price will be P1 and the quantity Q1. When the MC1 curve increases to MC2, the MC minus MR equality is established at E with P1 as a price equilibrium. So therefore, the increase in marginal cost is with marginal revenue gap. The price remains stable and rigid at P1. Hence, the prices are sticky under oligopoly. Thank you, students.